Here's an interesting example that baffles many folks out there. Only insertion loss has failed. Now insertion loss, when it fails, we simply turn around to the installer and say, hey, you've gone beyond 90 meters or 295 feet, which is the allowance for the permanent link. But when we look at this result, we see 65.2 meters. That's not even close to our 90 meter limit. Now sure, they could have fudged the MVP to try and get the length down, but that's not the case here. We know the MVP has been set correctly. So what could be at fault? Well, everything else looks good. If we go and look at the insertion loss trace, we see something rather curious. This smooth line below is our limit line, and the slightly wiggly lines above are our 4 pairs of our insertion loss measurement. And unlike crosstalk and return loss, we want the insertion loss to be below the limit line. On this occasion, it's above the limit line. And also what's rather unique about this is it starts off hugging the trace and then it starts separating as you go to the higher frequencies. What that is lubricant. This cable has been pulled through conduit using lubricant. And because lubricant is conductive, it's affecting what happens to the electrons in the cable. And rather crudely put, they're being sucked out of the cable. So for that reason, when we look at return loss looks great. And if we were to look at the HD TDR, that would also look great as well. Because we're not getting anything reflected back, the electrons are just disappearing. So, what is the solution here? Wait. Our experience tells us that as time goes on, the lubricant becomes less conductive as it becomes to, well, cure, not quite the right word, but as it stabilizes. And what you'll find is your insertion loss will get better and better and better. How long depends on whose lubricant you've been using and what the temperature is, how much you used. Data from the field suggests that it's anything from a week to maybe a month. So if you're in a situation where you're pulling cable through conduit using lubricant and you're expecting to terminate and test those cables within a week, you may want to reschedule your project plan and give it an extra allowance of time before you do that. Now, there are other lubricants on the market from companies such as Polywater. I'm sure there are others that do have lubricant that is specifically designed for datacom cabling, where it really minimizes that effect to the point where you could install that cable with the lubricant and start testing almost instantaneously. So go and talk to your lubricant vendor about what their lubricant does in terms of datacom cabling, specifically 5E and 6. Hopefully nobody's even trying to put 6A3 conduit. It can be done, but you need a lot of lubricant and it's just going to make the situation a whole lot worse.